So far, we have discussed the chemical level of organization and the cellular level of organization. Now we will discuss the tissue level of organization. We're going to talk about the different types of tissues in our bodies. Histology is a term that refers to the study of tissues. There are 4 types of tissues found in our bodies. There is epithelial, connective, muscle, and neural or nervous tissue. For now, we are only going to focus on epithelial and connective tissues. Later in this course, we will talk about muscle and nervous tissue. Let's begin with epithelial tissue. There are 2 primary functions for epithelial tissue. The first is protection. Epithelial tissues cover the body and line the internal organs. Secondly, they form glands. Glands are structures that produce fluid secretions. There are 4 characteristics associated with epithelial tissues. The first is cellularity. This refers to the cells being closely packed together and there's very little space or extracellular material between cells. The second characteristic is avascularity. Avascular means these tissues lack blood vessels, so they must attain their nutrients by diffusion or absorption. What avascularity means is that you will not see blood vessels running through epithelial tissues, but instead you find them near the tissue. The third characteristic of epithelial tissue is regeneration. This means that the cells in epithelial tissue can undergo mitosis. In epithelial tissues, the cell growth rates are much higher than many other cells in the body. If you think about the function of epithelial tissue as a tissue that provides protection, this explains why epithelial cells will undergo mitosis more frequently to repair the tissue when damaged. The last characteristic is that epithelial cells exhibit polarity. This means they have 2 surfaces. They have an exposed surface or apical surface, and they have the attached surface or basal surface. On the basal surface, the cells are attached to a basement membrane, much in the same way that the home you live in is attached to a foundation of some kind. It's important that we maintain the integrity of the epithelia, and we do that through intracellular connections or intracellular junctions. Cell junctions help to keep the epithelial tightly packed together, and it also allows for communication between epithelial cells. There are 3 types of junctions used to maintain the integrity of the epithelial tissue. The first is tight junctions. These junctions are located near the apical surface of the cells. They are formed by cross-linking occluding molecules. Tight junctions are like the zipper on your jeans. They prevent the passage of molecules between the epithelial cells. For example, tight junctions are in intestinal cells at the apical side of the intestinal epithelial layer, which prevents gastric waste products from entering the tissue space. Similarly, the blood-brain barrier has plenty of tight junctions, which protect the neural tissue from any harmful agents in the bloodstream. The second type of junction is the gap junction. Gap junctions provide a direct passageway through which small molecules and ions can pass directly between cells. Gap junctions consist of 6 connexin monomer proteins that assemble into a channel called a connexon. The ability of cells to share small molecules and ions easily facilitates rapid communication between cells. The third type of junction is the desmosome. Desmosomes attach cells to cells and provide elasticity. The desmosome structure provides tensile strength to tissues so that they can withstand stress from the environment. This is especially important in epithelial layers such as the ones in your skin. Let's talk about how we classify epithelium. Epithelial tissues are classified based on 2 things. They are classified based on the cell shape and on the number of layers of cells that make up the tissue. When determining the cell shape, you want to look at the most superficial layer of cells. For example, for squamous epithelium, cells are thin and flat like pancakes. In cuboidal epithelium, the cells are small cubes, and in columnar epithelium, the cells are very tall and rectangular. The second part of classification is the number of layers of cells. Simple epithelium has 1 layer of cells. Stratified epithelium consists of many layers of epithelial cells. Stratified epithelial tissues are also named based on the cell shape as well. When classifying stratified epithelium, you look at the cell shape in the most superficial layer. For example, here the cells are thin and flat, so this would be a stratified squamous epithelium. This one is stratified cuboidal. Stratified epithelium is much more durable, so it can handle more mechanical and chemical stresses. There's one more type of epithelial classification, pseudostratified epithelium. When you first look at this, you should notice that the nuclei are in multiple levels, so the tissue appears to be stratified. However, each cell is attached to the basement membrane, so it is really a single layer of cells. We call it pseudostratified because it kind of tries to fake you out. This type of epithelium is found lining our respiratory passageways. Alright, so let's look at some different types of epithelia and talk about their functions and locations. We're going to start with a simple squamous epithelium. This is a single layer of flat cells. This is a very thin epithelium and it's well adapted for diffusion. We find it in the alveoli of our lungs, we find it lining our blood vessels where it's known as the endothelium, and we find it lining our ventral body cavity. This is known as a mesothelium. Next up is stratified squamous epithelium. We have many layers where the basal layer is cuboidal, but the top layer is flat, which is why we call it stratified squamous epithelium. This type of epithelium is very strong and durable, so it's useful for protection. It can handle both mechanical and chemical stresses. We find this on the surface of our skin, the lining of the mouth, esophagus, and anus. There are two types of stratified squamous epithelium, keratinized and non-keratinized. Keratinized is a dry epithelium. Keratin is an intermediate filament that is found within the cells, and it makes them very durable. The skin that covers your body is keratinized epithelium. Non-keratinized epithelium is a moist epithelium, and it will dry out quickly if not kept moist. This is the type of epithelium that lines the mouth, the esophagus, and the anus. Next up is a cuboidal epithelium. We're going to start with a simple cuboidal epithelium. This is a single layer of cube-shaped cells. This type of epithelium is well adapted for secretion and absorption and is found in glands and ducts. There is simple cuboidal epithelium in portions of the kidney tubules and in the thyroid gland. Stratified cuboidal epithelium consists of two layers of cuboidal epithelium and is adapted for secretion and absorption. We find it lining some ducts in sweat and mammary glands. Next up is transitional epithelium. This type of epithelium contains cells that can change shape when stretched. So when the organ is relaxed, the cells are cube-like, and when the organ is stretched, the cells will flatten out so it's able to extend. This type of epithelium is in organs where volumes need to change. We find transitional epithelium lining the urinary bladder. Let's move on to columnar epithelium. The first is simple columnar epithelium. This is a single layer of columnar cells and is well adapted for secretion and absorption. We find this epithelium lining the small intestine, stomach, and large intestine. Lastly is pseudostratified columnar epithelium, where all cells sit on a basement membrane, so even though it looks like multiple layers, it is not. This type of epithelium is important for protection and secretion. Many times, this type of epithelium will contain goblet cells which produce mucus. The epithelial cells also contain cilia on the apical surface. This is the type of epithelium that lines our respiratory tract. I want you to think about the structure and function of these different types of epithelia. Think about what your digestive tract would do if it was lined by a stratified squamous epithelium instead of a simple columnar epithelium. Think about how it would be if your skin was covered with a non-keratinized epithelium instead of a keratinized one. For this homework assignment, I want you to read about glands and glandular epithelium. You can fill this worksheet out as you read through the corresponding sections in the text.